Black Op Radio presents 50 Reasons for 50 Years. Postscript, 1968.
I've been told for years that this is exactly what the Bureau was doing all the time. What you've described is a series of illegal actions intended squarely to deny First Amendment rights to some Americans. The trick now is for this committee to be able to figure out how to persuade the people of this country that indeed it did go on, and how shall we ensure that it never happen again.
As revelations of government wrongdoing became impossible to hide, congressional committees in the 1970s were rigorous in examining some matters and less so in others. Constitutional violations suffered by individuals received much attention, while interest in still unanswered questions pertaining to the assassinations was muted or under tight control. It was around this time that William Pepper began a decade-long process of trying to make sense of the King case, which culminated in his agreement to serve as Ray's lawyer.
He finally, in 1988, agreed that he would represent Ray. And from 88 to 91, he tried to get Ray a new trial. They went all the way to the Supreme Court. It didn't work.
And then we did a television documentary, an unscripted trial that was done by Thames Television and HBO.
That mock trial was broadcast all over the Western world.
Took the jury in that courtroom 7.5 hours to find Ray not guilty. That trial opened up the doors and the windows, and people started coming in with information and evidence.
In December of 1993, Lloyd Jowers, a restaurant owner in Memphis, went on national television to confess his role in the conspiracy to murder King. Jowers was the owner of a small restaurant called Jim's Grill. Jowers may have felt that the local and state authorities were about to reopen the case. He was wrong about that, but by going on television, he was to provide an opportunity for Pepper.
By stirring up renewed interest in the case and hearing the stories of many witnesses who had remained as of yet unheard, Pepper won the support of the King family and was pursuing grounds for a new trial through the ballistics evidence. There was a strong possibility that the bullet and rifle in evidence would not in fact match.
For almost about a year, there was a series of attempts by Pepper, assisted by the King family, to get the King case reopened in a criminal venue.
The case happened to fall to the court of Judge Brown. And to everybody's shock and surprise, Brown, an African American, was going to allow the case to go forward. Because one of the technical qualifications you had to have to reopen a murder case in Memphis was you had to have some kind of new ballistics evidence.
The new evidence was whether or not the bullets taken from King's body would match this rifle, because there was a kind of debate about that.
Judge Joe Brown was an excellent judge and was an expert on rifles himself, so he could tell pretty quickly that James Earl Ray had not used that rifle to kill Martin Luther King.
When I analyzed what was in the record, I was very dissatisfied with the so-called ballistics reports that were prepared by the FBI. Well, when we finally got tests done, which weren't the greatest and most expensive, it became quite obvious that the weapon that they had in the property room, purportedly Ray's .30-06 Model 760 Remington Game Master, a pump-action rifle, was not even close to the one that fired the fatal slug into Dr. King.
The ballistics evidence was moving toward that conclusion in a scientific way when Judge Brown was removed from the case, and that was the end of that. The ballistics testing and the possibility of reaching a scientific conclusion that would have provided the basis for a new trial for James Earl Ray, that all ended. And then, of course, James Earl Ray died.
Ray died in 1998. They were trying to get him to a different facility where he'd get a liver transplant because he was in line for one and they even had a donor. The judge wouldn't let him leave the prison he was in, so he died in prison. Pepper and the King family conferred to see what other options they had, and they basically felt the one option was a civil trial.
The King family, because of what they'd learned thus far, initiated a wrongful death lawsuit in the Memphis courts. That's what I attended from the 15th of November to December 8th, 1999, a 6-week trial, the only trial ever held for the assassination of Martin Luther King. It was a very comprehensive picture of the assassination of Dr. King. The King family wanted to place on record the evidence. They succeeded. We heard in total 70 witnesses. The picture that emerged was one of a high-level assassination plot that involved the CIA, FBI, an Army Forces rifle team. There was participation, too, by the Memphis Police Department. At the end of the trial, the verdict by an extraordinary jury who listened carefully to all of these witnesses, they reached the conclusion that Martin Luther King was indeed assassinated by a conspiracy that included, and this is in the words of their verdict, government agencies. King family put it on their website at kingcenter.com, the entire trial, and we still haven't heard hardly anything about it.
The U.S. Justice Department did not participate in the Memphis civil trial, and instead claimed to have conducted its own probe as it published findings which directly refute the civil trial's conclusions. Rather than allow their version of events to face cross-examination, the federal Justice Department depended on America's mainstream media to promote their point of view while downplaying and denigrating the Memphis civil trial.
The Memphis Commercial Appeal derided and downplayed the trial, as did, for that matter, the New York Times. The reporting was not only sporadic, but it was extremely unfair to the point of irresponsibility.
There appears to have been a deliberate gag order from both the national and local media not to divulge any important testimony that took place at that trial.
It's interesting what happened to the King family when they began to back this reopening of the case. The King family now started being attacked in the press, nationally and especially locally. There began to be all these hatchet jobs on Pepper. Give the King family a lot of credit that they shouldered on. They saw this thing out to the end. Pepper won his case in court. That was one of the good things that happened in these assassinations in the 1960s.
I think the 1999 trial really gave them closure because it put forward pretty much what the story was in terms of the involvement. I don't think that there has ever been a political assassination in history that has had such detailed examination, such detailed factual revelations about how and why it took place.
What I found when I got into the King case is if there was not actual governmental involvement, there was a turning of a blind eye by the government to circumstances. When I got through handling this case, or got removed from it, it looked like Ray was going to be declared by me in an order to be one of multiple scapegoats who were conveniently dispersed around and about the premises of the Lorraine Motel. And that whoever slew King was someone with probably, shall we say, official status, acting in a maverick fashion, but with the approval of those who were in the know. The true killers have not been caught. They probably never will be. And historically, it's not important who, but what is responsible for that kind of use of deadly force to influence and change domestic politics.
Stay tuned for the next installment, Postscript 1968.